Welcome to the Everyday Dan podcast, where we embark on a bite-sized journey of curiosity and discovery into the myriad of fascinating topics that I am passionate about. I'm your host, Dan, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this adventure as we learn new things together. And welcome back to another bonus episode of the podcast. Quick heads up, we won't always have bonus episodes, but I've been thinking about this topic, and here we are. And today's episode is dedicated to my dad, who has truly reminded me about who we'll be talking about today. Now, I want to spend the episode talking about a historical figure that I greatly look up to and would definitely be in my top 5 individuals that I would speak to if someone said I could talk to anyone I wanted to from history. I'm not going to say who the others are because you never know. We might talk about them in future episodes. But this particular figure's name is Theodore Roosevelt, and I want to introduce him with a speech of his, which is titled "The Man in the Arena." It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Oh, man, I love that speech. And a funny thing is I actually have it written on some note cards that I have on me somewhat regularly, and occasionally I'll pull it out and I'll read it when I'm thinking about something, if I'm on the fence about some kind of change I need to make or some kind of action that I may need to take that there's kind of a 50-50, may go bad, may go well, but I'm like, you know what? And so a lot of times I will think about that. Now, I mentioned this figure, this is a figure my dad reminded me of. Now, partly because he is one of my dad's favorite presidents, and also because my dad really embodied the bull moose mentality that is associated with good old Mr. Roosevelt. But I want to talk about him. Here, I have a couple interesting facts about the 26th president. Now, first one is aided by his excellent memory and his always high energy levels. Teddy Roosevelt actually wrote about 35 books in his lifetime, probably an estimated also 150,000 letters. And he also wrote an autobiography. So that's some interesting facts there. He was blind in one eye, and that was actually after a boxing injury in the White House. He actually had a hobby. The president had a hobby of boxing well into the presidency. And so he ended up suffering a detached retina after a bout. That happened in 1908. So he stopped fighting, and he switched to jiu-jitsu instead, which is, okay, yeah. Oh, I can't box anymore now. I'm just going to go into jiu-jitsu. Wow. Another fact, too, he was shot before a speech. But then he proceeded to still give the speech. I'm going to proceed to talk about that. And I'm going to kind of read a little bit of an excerpt talking about it. So as he prepared to give a speech, Theodore Roosevelt's opening line was hardly remarkable for a presidential campaign speech. Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. His second line, however, was a bombshell. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot. Now, at this point, clearly, Roosevelt had buried the lead. The horrified audience in the auditorium, this happened on October 14th, 1912, gasped as the former president unbuttoned his vest to reveal his blood-stained shirt. It'll take more than that to kill a bull moose, the wounded candidate assured them. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a bullet-riddled 50-page speech, holding up his prepared remarks, which had 2 big holes blown through each page. Roosevelt continued, "Fortunately, I had my manuscript, so you see I was going to make a long speech. And there is a bullet. There is where the bullet went through, and it probably saved me from it going into my heart. The bullet is in me now, so I cannot make a very long speech, but I will try my best." So that, in my opinion, may kind of tell you everything you need to know about him. But then, following his loss in the 1912 elections, he then proceeds to go through, gathers a party to explore an uncharted Rio da Duvida, the River of Doubt in Brazil, the mission was go through, chart the unknown river, collect specimens that would then go for the Museum of Natural History, which there is a book about that as well. And he was quoted and characterized as an electric battery of inexhaustible energy, which personally, I would not mind being characterized as that. But as we think about this in the bonus episode, I bring up these things as we talk about him. Again, I talked about looking up to him. He was a weak individual. He had asthma and stuff when he was a small boy. Didn't seem like he was really going to go anywhere in terms of, again, at this time point, asthma, things like that weren't exactly what we can overcome them today. They were problematic. But he goes through with true grit. He accomplished a ton of feats. He became one of the youngest presidents. He won a Nobel Peace Prize. He established the U.S. Forest Service. He managed to keep inflation low during his presidency, which maybe some other presidents could learn from him. He strengthened the U.S. Navy. He also became America's first brown belt in judo. And those are just a few highlights of his achievements. And I'm not the most obsessed history buff, but I do have historical figures I look up to again, and I mentioned he's one of mine. And I want to talk to him not because he's one of my interests. He falls, and obviously being that, he falls under the scope of the podcast, but also because I believe he sets a great example of grit and determination. So here's the thing. If you're sitting here, you're struggling with what you want to do, you feel like you're not going to go anywhere, maybe it's time to kind of lean into the bull moose mentality and push forward to be that man in the arena, the one experiencing both that victory and that defeat, the one who's leading from the front while the others shrink back. As TR himself said, "It is hard to fail, but it is worse never to have tried to succeed." Now that is all for now. So obviously I will see you guys on Monday for a regularly scheduled episode. But remember, these further words from our subject from today: do what you can with what you have, where you are.